What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this edition of Afterthoughts, recapping UFC 246, the first card of 2020, the first edition of Afterthoughts of 2020. And, well, let me just make it clear. This entire episode, we are talking about the man, the headlining attraction, Conor McGregor. The man that I'm sure for the next, I don't know, let's call it 3 or 4 months, because realistically, until that Khabib-Tony fight happens, and even after it happens, Conor will be what we're talking about. What's next for him? Where does he go from here? The fight itself against Cerrone was about as clinical as you can have a performance in a comeback fight. Chael Sonnen said in the post-fight show that when you have long layoffs, usually the first thing that tends to go is your precision or your accuracy. And from what we've seen in fighters returning from layoffs like that, usually speed is kind of that's more or less of a, God-given talent. Same thing with strength, same thing with power. But accuracy, crispness, attention to detail, understanding of, where your shots should be and whatnot, that's typically something that would be lost on someone who doesn't compete frequently. And when Conor fought Khabib, that did appear to be the case. He was landing shots, not many. The fight was, when he fought Khabib, now granted Khabib is a stylistic nightmare for Conor McGregor, but when he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov, it was very much an instance of clearly, I don't want to say it was all due to the fact that he didn't have his head in the game. I do think I think most of it was the fact that Khabib was just a better fighter, but it was definitely clear from the performance against Cowboy that his focus seems to be back in order. He seems to be back in a state where he actually cares about fighting again. He actually wants to compete at the highest level, and he thinks that he can. This was the most confident Conor McGregor we might have ever seen. More confident than the Aldo fight, more confident than the Eddie Alvarez fight. This Conor McGregor was just, like, the second that fight started, he was on ether, basically. He was at a level of just superiority everywhere compared to Cowboy Cerrone. That fight was over the second it started. The finishing sequence was beautiful. It was what you would expect from Conor McGregor. I will say this, though. I'm not putting a lot into this performance. Not to say Conor, again, he looked fantastic in this fight. This was about as great of a comeback fight as you could ask for. But looking at this fight, before, we all start jumping on, well, he's going to beat Khabib, and he's going to beat Tony, and he's going to beat Masvidal, and he's going to beat Kamaru Usman, and he's back to what he was. I urge you to please take a deep breath and analyze the situation here. I'm not saying Cowboy was destined to lose this fight, but I will say that this was a fight very much that stylistically favored Conor McGregor. He's fighting a guy in Cowboy Cerrone who has issues against southpaws, issues against pressure fighters, issues against power strikers, all things that Conor fits the mold of. Not to mention, he was at a reach disadvantage, and he's always struggled in these, shall we say, higher profile opportunities. So I don't want to say Cowboy was brought in to lose this fight, but this was very much as close as you can get to a tune-up fight that you will have in MMA. Now, for me personally, I want to see Conor fight Jorge Masvidal next. If I had my ideal choice, I think giving him a fight with Khabib is a bad idea for a number of reasons. Well, number one, Khabib has to beat Tony Ferguson. That's the main thing, obviously, right? And that's not a given. But also, not only, of course, fighting at welterweight should not ensure a lightweight title shot. That's beating a dead horse at this point. That's obvious. But I think at this stage where you have Masvidal kind of hitting a new level of stardom, of course, Conor's still the biggest star in the sport, unarguably so. That's the fight to make for a number of reasons. Neither guy's injured. Masvidal last fought in November looked great against Nate Diaz. Conor looks great against Cowboy Cerrone. They're both they clearly both have a lot of momentum, and I think that will ensure going forward a welterweight title opportunity. And if the hype was any indication, where Megan O'Leary interviews Masvidal during the event, and, we see they pan to Masvidal numerous times, more so than Kamaru Usman, it would seem to indicate that Masvidal would make the most sense from a promotional standpoint. And I know Dana said he didn't want Conor fighting at 170. He thought Masvidal's too big. I know Usman's too big. I think that's the fight to make, and I think Conor will negotiate it in such a way that will probably be the next fight. More so than Khabib, more so than Tony Ferguson if he wins. Excuse me. More so than Kamaru Usman. I think the Masvidal fight's the way to go. Conor looked really good, but I'm not putting too much into it just yet. I think, for the most part, he is back. I mean, he looked better than ever, but let's see him against one of these really tough guys, because it only gets harder from here. But again, great fight for Conor McGregor. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching the first edition of Afterthoughts for 2020. My name is Johann Castro. Tune in next time, and I'll see you later.